So, have you watched any Our Flag Means Death?
No, but I see a lot about it on Tumblr.
We just finished the season finale. Highly recommend. Highly. And so it's like 1 part cringe humor, which I hate, and like 2 parts morbid humor, which I'm okay with, and then like 5 parts heartwarming, charming adorableness. And it's so good. It's so good.
It's on.
If you find an opportunity to watch it, stop before the season finale because it ends on a really sad fucking cliffhanger. Like, just don't do that until the next season's out and then go ahead. Because right now, Taika Waititi will be crying in my head for however long it takes them to put another season out. And there's nothing sadder than Taika Waititi crying. It's.
No. I mean, does it help if you know that in real life he's in a throuple with Tessa Thompson and another beautiful lady?
Now, is that valid, or was that just paparazzi took pictures of him cuddling women on his porch and everybody jumped to a conclusion?
Well, all 3 of them were kissing, so...
Yeah, I used to kiss my friends.
Yeah. You were also sleeping with most of your friends around that time.
Yeah, that's valid. I don't see what that didn't make any of us a throuple. But no, it doesn't, because that's not the character. The character is sad, and I want to snuggle him and make it better, or at least fling someone at him who would make it better. That's what I want to do. But yeah, it's gonna haunt me. But everything up till that, and even that, is good. It's just I want to watch another episode now to make it get better. Highly recommend. Is the takeaway here.
What's it on?
HBO.
Ah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone could acquire an HBO pass or something for you if it were important.
I mean, I haven't watched a show in about a year, so I don't know.
I get really antsy when my family asks me to, but this one was an exception. You know, so there's a couple of things. One is there's a character who is the actor is not NB, and the character is NB. And it's sort of, they think he's a man, and then they find out he's a woman, and then they're arguing with her about it, and they're like, I don't care. And everyone's like, oh, they don't care. Okay. And from then on, no one refers to them by any gender other than they. Including, they end up in a situation where they meet the grandmother, and the grandmother talks about how they, as a child, was such a wretchedly violent little child, and it's like not once does anyone give them the wrong gender. And I'm like, it makes me so happy.
That's really easy. It can be so easy.
It's so easy. It's so simple. And the other thing is, I realized that I've been programmed to accept that anything being produced by any sort of Hollywood machine is going to give us a token gay couple. And then that's it. That will be the gay couple. So when there's more than one in a story, and it's not Jeffrey, it's not marketed for as a gay movie, it's suddenly, that warms my heart too, because I'm like, oh, that subverts my expectations of this terrible edifice. Like, yay. He's still crying, and I want to hug him. Even after the chopping. Anyway. It is your turn to read. It is my turn to art.
And where were we?
I don't know. I think I dropped my book and lost our place. Oh, we were post that guy. Ganborigan. We got past Ganborigan. I think Aomer had just said something about since men spoke with mouth. And after we did that, I was like, that was a really himbo thing to say. I should totally have put that in his tone, like, this will be proved truer than when men spoke with mouth.
Oh. Do, 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 do.
But we hadn't made it to the Pelennor Fields yet.
Cool. I have found when men spoke with mouth. That's a good stopping place. Easy to find.
Yes. Okay, wait. I think we made it one more page. Strike wherever the enemy gathers. Other plans we cannot make, for we know not yet how things stand upon the field. Forth now and fear no darkness.
Yes. Excellent.
Yup. And mayhap this time shall the old thaw be proved truer than ever before.
We will call this day the 25th of March. For it is March the 25th. And those who are not here, they shall feel themselves sort of crappy.
Yeah, they won't like it because they weren't here where we are today.
I just realized recently that monologue is from Due South, but it's Leslie Nielsen doing it.
Oh, wow.
Also, Due South is on YouTube. You can
Oh my
find,
God, I loved Due South.
yeah, you can find a playlist of all of the original Due South.
That was how I pictured Captain Carrot for years.
Uh-huh. Yep, that checks out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Same archetype. Exactly the same freaking archetype. Even to the point of coming in from the wilderness and having no freaking clue what's going on. Oh. Anyway, we've got this. Ugh. I need to fix this illustration because the face is a little bit muddy, but she's meant to look kind of haunted. Does it work?
Yeah,
He's like, are you okay? And she's like,
So I don't know if this is fixable, but I have a hard time figuring out what's her ears and what's chair.
That's exactly what I'm gonna do. Gonna up the highlights and the shadows and just make it a lot more contrasty.
That will help for sure.
I hope so. And that's what we'll do.
Meanwhile, the leading company rode off as swiftly as they could, for it was still deep dark, whatever change Woodfire might forebode. Merry was riding behind Durnhelm, clutching with the left hand, while with the other he tried to loosen his sword in its sheath. I'm just picturing him like trying not to fall off the horse.
Right.
Like, you know, when you're trying to open a jar and you're just like
I'm so screwed.
He felt now bitterly the truth of the old king's words. In such a battle, what would you do, Meriadoc? Just this, he thought. Encumber a rider and hope at best to stay in my seat and not be pounded to death by galloping hoofs. It was no more than a league to where the outwalls had stood. They soon reached them. Too soon for Merry. Wild cries broke out, and there was some clash of arms, but it was brief. The orcs busy about the walls were few and amazed, and they were quickly slain or driven off. Before the ruin of the north gate in the Ramus, the king halted again. The first Aered drew up behind him and about him on either side. Durnhelm kept close to the king, though Elfhelm's company was away on the right. Grimbold's men turned aside and passed round to a great gap in the wall further eastward. Merry peered from behind Durnhelm's back. Far away, maybe 10 miles or more, there was a great burning, but between it and the riders lines of fire blazed in a vast crescent, at the nearest point less than a league distant. He could make out little more on the dark plain, and as yet he neither saw any hope of morning, nor felt any wind, changed or unchanged. Now silently the host of Rohan moved forward into the field of Gondor, pouring in slowly but steadily, like the rising tide through breaches in a dike that men have thought secure. But the mind and will of the Black Captain were bent wholly on the falling city, and as yet no tidings came to him warning that his designs held any flaw.
Ha, loser.
Psych!
Oh, we haven't said this on since we went live yet. Happy Death of Sauron Day.
Ah, yes, happy Death of Sauron Day.
Yes.
Once again, the glorious 25th of March.
Once again. Yes. That's, okay.
No, hang on. Okay, there we go. Sorry, something just blinked on my screen. I think I accidentally clicked something with the spine of the book.
Yee.
Anyway. After a while, the king led his men away somewhat eastward, to come between the fires of the siege and the outer fields. Still they were unchallenged, and still Theoden gave no signal. At last he halted once again. The city was now nearer. A smell of burning was in the air, and a very shadow of death. The horses were uneasy. But the king sat upon Snowmane motionless, gazing upon the agony of Minas Tirith, as if stricken suddenly by anguish or by dread. He seemed to shrink down, cowed by age. Merry himself felt as if a great weight of horror and doubt had settled on him. His heart beat slowly. Time seemed poised in uncertainty. They were too late. Too late was worse than never. Perhaps Theoden would quail, bow his old head, turn, slink away to hide in the hills. Then suddenly Merry felt it at last, beyond doubt. A change. Wind was in his face. Light was glimmering. Far, far away in the south, the clouds could dimly be seen as remote gray shapes, rolling up, drifting, and morning lay beyond them. But at that same moment there was a flash, as if lightning had sprung from the earth beneath the city. For a searing second it stood dazzling far off in black and white, its topmost tower like a glittering needle. And then as the darkness came again, there came rolling over the fields a great boom. At that sound, the bent shape of the king sprang suddenly upright. I'm not going to lie to you, it says suddenly erect, but that confused me, so we're not saying that. Lightning fetish, Theoden? Anyway. Nazgul?
Oh, you're going to nerd hell for that one.
I would wear a t-shirt that says going to nerd hell. Particularly if it said it in Cinderin. Anyway. So the king sat up.
Yeah.
In whatever way.
Yeah. Very quickly.
Tall and proud he seemed again, and rising in his stirrups he cried in a loud voice, more clear than any there had ever heard a mortal man achieve before. Arise, arise, riders of Theoden. Fell deeds awake, fire and slaughter. Spear shall be shaken, shield be splintered. A sword day, a red day, ere the sun rises. Ride now, ride now, ride to Gondor. I can't read that without getting goosebumps.
I know! It makes me so fucking happy! Oh.
With that, he seized the great horn from Guthlaf, his banner bearer, and he blew such a blast upon it that it burst asunder.
Woohoo! Which sounds great in a book, but I'm glad they didn't keep that in the movie.
Again, the slapstick.
Yes.
And straightway all the horns in the host were lifted up in music, and the blowing of the horns of Rohan in that hour was like a storm upon the plain and a thunder in the mountains. Ride now, ride to Gondor. Suddenly the king cried to Snowmane, and the horse sprang away. Behind him his banner blew in the wind, white horse upon a field of green, but he outpaced it. After him thundered the knights of his house, but he was ever before them. Eomer rode there, the white horse tail on his helm floating in his speed, and the front of the first Eoreds roared like a breaker foaming to the shore, but Theoden could not be overtaken. Fey he seemed, or the battle fury of his fathers ran like new fire in his veins, and he was borne up on Snowmane like a god of old, even as Orome the Great in the battle of the Valar when the world was young. His golden shield was uncovered, and lo, it shone like an image of the sun, and the grass flamed into green about the white feet of his steed. For morning came, morning and a wind from the sea, and darkness was removed, and the hosts of Mordor wailed, and terror took them, and they fled and died, and the hosts of wrath rode over them. And then all the host of Rohan burst into song, and they sang as they slew, for the joy of battle was on them, and the sound of their singing that was fair and terrible came even to the city.
I love that. I will never not love that. And it's fucking epic. And what do you think they sang?
um, yes. That's the only thing it could be. I was like trying to come up with a really dumb answer, but that's what it had to be.
It had to be that or Scotsman, because that would be and terrible.
I was thinking like crap. What was I thinking? I don't know. It's gonna come to me somewhere during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields.
But 6,000 horsemen singing the immigrant song while slaughtering orcs is just something I have to see now.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm good enough to get into nerd heaven, that's something I get to see.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that would be the kind of song that would carry too, the like and you would be in Minas Tirith just like, what the fuck is that? And then it's like, Valhalla, I am coming, and you're like, oh my god, it's the Rohirrim. Are we glad they're here again? Glad? Yeah. Okay, we're glad. We're probably glad.
They're here to help, right? We do have beer, right?
They're gonna stop at the wall with the killing, right? Chapter 6, The Battle of the Pelennor Fields. We made it, fam.
We made it!
But it was no orc chieftain or brigand that led the assault upon Gondor. Get ready to get sad.
Yeah.
The darkness was breaking too soon, before the date that his master had set for it. Fortune had betrayed him for the moment, and the world had turned against him. Victory was slipping from his grasp, even as he stretched out his hand to seize it. But his arm was long, even though no one could tell because he was invisible. He was still in command, wielding great powers. King, Ringwraith, Lord of the Nazgul, he had many weapons. He left the gate and vanished. Theoden, king of the Mark, had reached the road from the gate to the river, and he turned towards the city that was now less than a mile distant. He slackened his speed a little, seeking new foes, and his knights came about him, and Durnhelm was with them. Ahead, nearer the walls, Elfhelm's men were among the siege engines, hewing, slaying, driving their foes into the fire pits. Well nigh all the northern half of the Pelennor was overrun, and their camps were blazing. Orcs were flying toward the river like herds before the hunters, and the Rohirrim went hither and thither at their will. But they had not yet overthrown the siege, nor won the gate. Many foes stood before it, and on the further half of the plain were other hosts still unfought. Southward beyond the road lay the main force of the Haradrim, and there their horsemen were gathered about the standard of their chieftain. And he looked out, and in the growing light he saw the banner of the king, and that it was far ahead of the battle with few men about it. Then he was filled with a red wrath and shouted aloud, and displaying his standard, black serpent upon scarlet, he came against the white horse in the green with great press of men, and the drawing of the scimitars of the Southrons was like a glitter of stars. Then Theoden was aware of him, and would not wait for his onset, but crying to Snowmane, he charged headlong to greet him. Great was the clash of their meeting. But the white fury of the Northmen burned the hotter. And more skilled was their knighthood with long spears and bitter. Fewer were they, but they clove through the Southrons like a firebolt in a forest. Right through the press drove Theoden Thengil's son, and his spear was shivered as he threw down their chieftain. Out swept his sword, and he spurred to the standard, hewed staff and bearer, and the black serpent foundered. Then all that was left unslain of their cavalry turned and fled far away.
It's kind of funny that's all we get to know about that. It's not like satisfying for the reader because we saw him marshaling his troops and coming and being this, big baddie boss that was going to be like, no.
No, he's kind of the Imrahil of Sauron's forces.
Yeah.
He just shows up and gets his ass kicked, and that's all we ever hear about it.
Like, he was important. You can tell by the language being used that he was important, but not important enough to give him a backstory. He's just there.
Right? I think it's very, like, that passage where they're fighting is one of the ones, and I think throughout the Battle of the Pelennor, like, it's the most, like, saga type cadence and alliteration that Tolkien uses is when he's describing battles.
Yeah, it gets less real then.
Yeah.
I've heard that he hated writing battles and got them over with as quickly as possible for that reason.
Makes sense.
Right? Yeah, I'm not going to hold it against him.
Yeah, well, also, like, his personal history aside, fight scenes are really hard to write.
They're so hard to write.
Like,
oh my god! I noticed when I was reading the Firestone aloud to the teenagers that you get the impression, even though Tanya Huff is an absolute wordsmith, that every time someone's fighting, the others are just kind of standing there, like Buttercup in the movie.
Yeah, man. One time I had to write a fight scene that started while one of the characters was eating a sandwich. And that sounds like a funny idea. And then you're like, oh my God, I have to know where the sandwich is every goddamn moment of this fight. What's she doing with the sandwich right now, Quinn? Better figure it out.
Like, oh yeah. Yeah, I'm there. Holy crap. Like on the same topic. Here is this little town. It's folk art, right? They just kind of exist. Yeah. The original is up there, right? Well, having drawn the original, I was like, so every time I do something like a view out of a window like that, it's just going to be generic, right? That was the only illustration where my brain let that happen. By the time we get to the one where they're sitting on the hill, I know where that hill is, and I know which angle is I know where all those houses are. I know which one she lives in. I know which one her friend lives in. I'm like, you can't do generic. You have to freaking know.
Yeah.
Because brain.
Brain like know things.
Yeah, brain will not let me not know things, especially things where someone might try to ask me later.
Exactly. Brain like know, so man can speak with mouth.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Well put, AMR. Let's keep writing. So the nothing boss just got his ass handed to him.
Yes. Yes, evil Imrahil is dead.
Yay!
But lo, suddenly in the midst of the glory of the king, his golden shield was dimmed. Crap. The new morning was blotted from the sky. Dark fell about him. Horses reared and screamed. Men cast from the saddle lay groveling on the ground. To me, cried Theoden. Up, Eorlingas, fear no darkness. But Snowmane, wild with terror, stood up on high, fighting with the air. And then with a great scream he crashed upon his side. A black dart had pierced him. The king fell beneath him.
I thought Snowmane was a mare.
Nope.
Oh, weird.
The great shadow descended like a falling cloud. I think most war horses are stallions because they're more aggressive.
Check.
The great shadow descended like a falling cloud, and behold, it was a winged creature, if bird, then greater than all other birds. And it was naked, and neither quill nor feather did it bear, and its vast pinions were as webs of hide between horned fingers, and it stank. I'm so sorry, but the pterodactyl song just came into my head. It is a motherfucking pterodactyl here too.
Anyways.
A creature of an older world, maybe it was, whose kind, lingering in forgotten mountains, cold beneath the moon, outstayed their day, and in hideous eyrie bred this last untimely brood, apt to evil. And the Dark Lord took it and nursed it with fell meats, until it grew beyond the measure of all other things that fly, and he gave it to his servant to be his steed.
I want to know what the hell fell meats are, except that I totally don't. But it's such a great short way to describe something that you really don't want to hear about.
I literally had that exact same train of thought while I was reading that sentence.
Like, what? You can't be more specific? Oh, no, never mind. I don't want you to be more specific.
Right. Actually, please don't be more specific. I can probably guess.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well done. Well played, Professor, once again.
Down, down it came, and then, folding its fingered webs, it gave a croaking cry, and settled upon the body of Snowmane, digging in its claws, stooping its long, naked neck. Upon it sat a shape, dark, black-mantled, huge and threatening. A crown of steel he bore, but between rim and robe naught was there to see, save only a deadly gleam of eyes. The Lord of the Nazgul. To the air he had returned, summoning his steed ere the darkness failed. And now he was come again, bringing ruin, turning hope to despair and victory to death. A great black mace he wielded. But Theoden was not utterly forsaken. The knights of his house lay slain about him, or else mastered by the madness of their steeds were borne far away. Yet one stood there still, Dernhelm the Young, faithful beyond fear. And he wept, for he had loved his lord as a father. Right through the charge, Merry had been borne unharmed behind him until his shadow came. And then when Fola had thrown them in his terror, and now ran wild upon the plain, Merry crawled on all fours like a dazed beast, and such a horror was on him that he was blind and sick. King's man, his heart cried within him. You must stay by him. As a father you shall be to me, you said. But his will made no answer, and his body shook. He dared not open his eyes or look up. Then out of the blackness of his mind, he thought that he heard Dernhelm speaking. Yet, now the voice seemed strange, recalling some other voice that he had known. Begone, foul Dwimmerlike, lord of Carrion, leave the dead in peace. A cold voice answered, Come not between the Nazgul and his prey, or he will not slay thee in thy turn. He will bear thee away to the houses of lamentation, beyond all darkness, where thy flesh shall be devoured, and thy shriveled mind be left naked to the lidless eye.
Tempting, but no.
A sword rang as it was drawn. Do what you will, but I will hinder it if I may. Hinder me? Thou fool! No living man may hinder me. Then Merry heard of all sounds in that hour the strangest. It seemed that Dernhelm laughed, and the clear voice was like the ring of steel. But no living man am I. You look upon a woman. Eowyn I am, Eomund's daughter. You stand between me and my lord and kin. Begone if you be not deathless. To living or dark undead, I will smite you if you touch him. I can see why they shortened that in the movie, but it is a great speech.
It is such a good speech.
The winged creature screamed at her, but the ringwraith made no answer and was silent, as if in sudden doubt. Oh shit, I didn't think of that loophole. Fuck. Very amazement for a moment conquered Merry's fear. He opened his eyes, and the blackness was lifted from them. There, some paces from him, sat the great beast, and all seemed dark about it, and above it loomed the Nazgul lord like a shadow of despair. A little to the left, facing them, stood she whom he had called Dernhelm, but the helm of her secrecy had fallen from her, and her bright hair, released from its bonds, gleamed with pale gold upon her shoulders. Her eyes, gray as the sea, were hard and fell, and yet tears were on her cheek. The sword was in her hand, and she raised her shield against the horror of her enemy's eyes. Eowyn it was, and Dernhelm also, for into Merry's mind flashed the memory of the face that he saw at the riding from Dunharrow, the face of one that goes seeking death, having no hope. Pity filled his heart and great wonder, and suddenly the slow-kindled courage of his race awoke. He clenched his hand. She should not die, so fair, so desperate. At least she should not die alone, unaided. The face of their enemy was not turned towards him, but still he hardly dared to move, dreading lest the deadly eyes should fall on him. Slowly, slowly he began to crawl aside, but the black captain, in doubt and malice intent upon the woman before him, heeded him no more than a worm in the mud. Suddenly the great beast beat its hideous wings, and the wind of them was foul. Again it leaped into the air, and then swiftly fell down upon Eowyn, shrieking, striking with beak and claw. Still she did not blench, maiden of the Rohirrim, child of kings, slender but as a steel blade, fair yet terrible. A swift stroke she dealt, skilled and deadly. The outstretched neck she clove asunder, and the hewn head fell like a stone. Backward she sprang as the huge shape crashed to ruin, vast wings outspread, crumpled on the earth. And with its fall the shadow passed away. A light fell about her, and her hair shone in the sunrise. Out of the wreck rose the Black Rider, tall and threatening, towering above her. With a cry of hatred that stung the very ears like venom, he let fall his mace. Her shield was shivered in many pieces, and her arm was broken. She stumbled to her knees. He bent over her like a cloud, and his eyes glittered. He raised his mace to kill. But suddenly he too stumbled forward with a cry of bitter pain, and his stroke went wide, driving into the ground. Merry's sword had stabbed him from behind, shearing through the black mantle, and passing up beneath the hauberk had pierced the sinew behind his mighty knee.
His mighty knee!
I also see why they didn't do that, and had him just stab him in the foot instead, but like, can you imagine you're the Lord of the Nazgul and nothing has hurt you in thousands of years, and then someone stabs you in the fucking knee?
In the fucking knee! Like, I just want to know if the Nazgul have an afterlife. The others are going to join him, and they're going to be like, "So, Your Majesty, leader of us, King of Terror, etc. So a short person stabbed you in the knee, and then a girl killed you. Is that what I'm to understand?" Tell us again.
He was short. I didn't see him coming. Eowyn! Eowyn! Cried Merry. Then tottering, struggling up with her last strength, she drove her sword between crown and mantle as the great shoulders bowed before her. The sword broke sparkling into many shards. The crowd rolled away with a clang. Eowyn fell forward upon her fallen foe. But lo, the mantle and hauberk were empty.
Lo!
Shapeless they lay now on the ground, torn and tumbled, and a cry went up into the shuddering air and faded to a shrill wailing, passing with the wind, a voice bodiless and thin that died, and was swallowed up, and was never heard again in that age of this world.
Which does kind of beg the question, was it heard in a different age?
Okay, let's not undermine Eowyn's victory here.
You're right. Yeah. Focus. Just when he's specific, you gotta wonder why.
I get you. And there stood Meriadoc the Hobbit in the midst of the slain, blinking like an owl in the daylight, for tears blinded him. And through a mist he looked on Eowyn's fair head as she lay and did not move. And he looked on the face of the king, fallen in the midst of his glory. For Snowmane in his agony had rolled away from him again, yet he was the bane of his master. Then Merry stooped and lifted his hand to kiss it, and lo, Theoden opened his eyes, and they were clear, and he spoke in a quiet voice, though labored. "Farewell, Master Holbitha," he said. My body is broken. I go to my fathers, and in their mighty company I shall not now be ashamed. I felled the black serpent, a grim morn, and a glad day, and a golden sunset. Mary could not speak, but wept anew. Forgive me, Lord, he said at last, if I broke your command, and yet have done no more in your service than to weep at our parting.
And stab the Witch King in the knee.
I was gonna say, bro. The old king smiled. Grieve not, it is forgiven. Great heart will not be denied. Live now in blessedness, and when you sit in peace with your pipe, think of me. For never now shall I sit with you in Meduseld, as I promised, or listen to your herb lore. He closed his eyes, and Mary bowed beside him. Where is Eomer? My eyes darken, and I would see him ere I go. He must be king after me, and I would send word to Eowyn. She would not have me leave her, and now I shall not see her again, dearer than daughter. Lord, Lord, began Mary brokenly, she is... But at that moment
She's
there was
right there.
there was a great clamor, and all about them horns and trumpets were blowing. Mary looked round. He had forgotten the war and all the world beside, and many hours it seemed since the king rode to his fall, though in truth it was only a little while. But he saw now that they were in danger of being caught in the very midst of the great battle that would soon be joined. New forces of the enemy were hastening up the road from the river, and from under the walls came the legions of Morgul, and from the southward fields came footmen of Harad with horsemen before them, and behind them rose the huge backs of the Mumakil with war towers upon them. But northward the white crest of Eomer led the great front of the Rohirrim, which he had again gathered and marshaled, and out of the city came all the strength of men that was in it, and the silver swan of Dol Amroth was borne in the van, driving the enemy from his place.
Yay! We don't fucking care.
Who's that guy again?
Wasn't he the waiter?
Who gave the waiter a sword?
I mean, when needs must, I guess.
Meanwhile, Emerhill is there like, keep telling you I'm the Prince of Dol Amroth. Yeah, whatever. Can I have a Pellegrino when you have a sec?
Prince of where?
For a moment the thought flitted through Mary's mind. Where is Gandalf? Is he not here? Could he not have saved the king and Eowyn? But thereupon Eomer rode up in haste, and with him came the knights of the household that still lived and had now mastered their horses. They looked in wonder at the carcass of the fell beast that lay there, and their steeds would not go near. But Eomer leaped from the saddle, and grief and dismay fell upon him as he came to the king's side and stood there in silence. Then one of the knights took the king's banner from the hand of Guthlaf the banner-bearer, who lay dead, and he lifted it up. Slowly Theoden opened his eyes. Seeing the banner, he made a sign that it should be given to Eomer. Hail, King of the Mark, he said. Ride now to victory. Bid Eowyn farewell. And so he died, and knew not that Eowyn lay near him. And those who stood by wept, crying, Theoden King! Theoden King!
Ah!
But Eomer said to them, Mourn not overmuch. Mighty was the fallen, meet was his ending. When his mound is raised, women then shall weep. War now calls us.
Yeah, we won't weep. The women will weep. We won't weep. We'll be cutting onions, but we won't weep.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
I'm not crying.
Someday, but not now.
Yes. My eyeballs are sweating.
Yet he himself wept as he spoke.
Very sweaty eyeballs.
War now calls us. This is the next line, by the way. Yet he himself wept as he spoke.
Yep.
Let his knights remain here, he said, and bear his body in honor from the field, lest the battle ride over it. Yea, and all these other of the king's men that lie here. And he looked at the slain, recalling their names. Then suddenly he beheld his sister Eowyn as she lay, and he knew her. He stood a moment as a man who is pierced in the midst of a cry by an arrow through the heart. And then his face went deathly white, and a cold fury rose in him, so that all speech failed him for a while. A fey mood took him. Eowyn, Eowyn, he cried at last. Eowyn, how come you here? What madness or devilry is this? Death! Death! Death take us all! Then, without taking counsel or waiting for the approach of the men of the city, he spurred headlong back to the front of the great horse, and blew a horn and cried aloud for the onset. Over the field it rang his clear voice calling, Death! Ride! Ride to ruin and the world's ending! And with that, the host began to move, but the Rohirrim sang no more. Death! They cried, with one voice, loud and terrible. And gathering speed like a great tide, their battle swept about their fallen king and passed, roaring away southward. I thought of the song that the Rohirrim are singing in the silly version, which is, well, hang on. Let me find it and I'll share my screen. One moment.
Awesome.
It's attached to a video, which I think you will also enjoy.
I have been watching The Friendship Onion while working on these interminable colored pencils. Holy crap, colored pencils take so fucking long. Yeah.
Lovely. All right. Ah, no, not that.
Pardon me. Oh.
Okay. I share the screen. Okay. Can you see?
I can see.
All right. So that's what the Rohirrim were singing.
Yeah. If, you know, it was the silly version.
In the silly version, yes.
I've also got an inkling that at least part of the battle, because it's a good long battle, they should sing the Scotsman.
I mean, they've been singing for like 2 hours at this point. They've had lots of time.
Yeah.
They have a whole like ye old Spotify playlist of battles.
And now someone needs to put together the playlist of the Rohirrim. An Aered of melody.
Perhaps.
Indeed. But it is after 8, so...
It is indeed, and I have things to make. So
as do I.
I will see you tomorrow.
Woohoo! All right, I love you, cuidado.
Love you too, Liamas.
Bye.
Bye.
I can't cut out. You've maximized the screen.
Oh, no, here we go.